All right. So what are we here for? What are we here for?
Pizza.
Yeah. Okay. So this is going to be one of the first major sessions that I have planned that I want to introduce some of the changes to the template and some of the things that have kind of made it been a little bit easier to follow, a little bit quicker to find yourself around and kind of maybe show some of the things. It isn't necessarily meant right now to be a full deep dive into any one thing. We're going to do focus trainings on that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end, which will be optional if you want to attend or not, if you want to learn more on how to do something quickly and more efficiently. Some of the intended improvements, are things like the view templates have been narrowed down, cleaned up. There's still some work to be done on the settings of them for line weights and whatnot. So I'll be working on those continuously, but at least now we're to a point where any of our new projects started with this should go a little bit smoother than they have in the past. It's easy for me to say that because, I'm the one that started this thing. So
it's not intimidating to look at.
Right.
You don't have to decipher between 3 different view templates per sheet that's set up. So.
And the whole thing about Revit is just like AutoCAD. Like there's a million ways to do something, right? And it's not meant to handcuff you to do things, the process that you want to do. The ultimate goal is that the graphics are the same in the models and in the sheet. So all of our projects look the same. And as you get used to using some of these, which may be new, obviously, and new things are kind of tough sometimes, but once you get the hang of it and start using it, you'll start to see really quick how much faster you can be in this. Even from the simplest of things where the sheets have already been created and placeholdered. So you can easily create your sheets quickly without having to think about, okay, what's the sheet number, what's the sheet name, and all that good stuff. So who's this for? This is for everybody. I don't know if any of you actually have looked at the invite, but I did include a PDF in there of the agenda if you want to check it out and follow along. It's loose, and hopefully I can stick to these minutes. I'm not very good with that, so we'll see how that goes. So who's this for? This is for everybody at Bodeway, whether it's Blue Star, WBK, not as much. I mean, they're obviously invited to attend if they'd like, but I don't know that I actually sent out any invitations to them because a lot of what we're going to talk about here isn't really going to matter to them at all. With Steelhead, I thought it was important to invite them at least to this first one so they could kind of get a feeling of where our template is. Not that they'll be working in it, but Howard will be having to help work with me to kind of tailor some things to, thank you, to tailor some things to easier work with each other. So, the whole idea is that we're a group, we're a team, and we're talking with each other and doing things that, affect positively with other staff to help them out, and vice versa. So more to come on the type meetings that Howard will be running for MEP, and I would suggest, and I haven't talked with him about it, but that even architectural Blue Star and 7 Gen folks would be able to attend that, just to kind of, like I said, get a feel of what they're going through and how they work. Will help you better understand why we do some of the things we do.
It also will give people just a little more experience into their workflow and what their thought process is.
Yep. All right, so the first thing you might notice on the screen is I've changed everything from 7 Gen over to Bodeway because we are trying to blur the lines. Might as well start now. It's a Bodeway template. You'll still see references to 7 Gen. Forgive me for that. I'll get them all switched out eventually. But the intent of this template is to be used by any one of us. So Blue Star, you guys could start your projects from this template. Steelhead, I know you guys have your own template, but you'll definitely steal some pieces and parts out of this, especially once Howard and I can get the template updated for Steelhead with the correct sheet publish orders and things like that, which will come sooner than later. In fact, we're supposed to talk next week, so we'll get that updated. Hopefully, everybody has had a chance at least to see some of this. And like I said, if you haven't, don't worry. I'm always available afterwards. I've got a half hour planned at the end for people to ask questions, and we can look at things, whatever you want to do to kind of get a feel for it. And you know, Veronica even said it to me earlier, most people aren't going to really know what they're looking at until they get in and play with it. So I know some of the headaches that have appeared since I've started of projects not getting automatically updated to this. That's a slippery slope, and it's always one that you want to make sure that you're not affecting other people's work to have to rework. And so that's a consideration you need to put in when you're considering updating things to a different template style. Things like schedules and things like that are all based on parameters that, you know, could have been handled in 5,000 different ways. So sometimes it's just easier to use what you got, move on to the next one, and eventually this template will get to 100% accurate and ready to go, and all of our projects will start using it, and you'll start feeling even more efficient. So, okay, the first thing I have is the project browser. You might have noticed this in other projects, some of you may not have. There's not a million plan view type list here anymore. You can see that everything is broken down into what the actual plan is. Also notice that there isn't any SD, CD type things. The reason for that is because it is really not needed. A Revit model is a current, up-to-date, living, breathing model, right? So the minute you start adding drawing information for DD, it is no longer an SD model. And there's no way to really capture that except to go back and look at your Bluebeam PDFs, which is what most people are going to do, to go back and look at previous versions. So that's why it was I understand where the thought process came from, but it really doesn't work because, like I said, I can click on an SD view and it's going to be CD if we're in CDs because that's what everybody has done, right? With the exception of annotations, but the model itself is going to be a higher level. So that's kind of the why we got away from some of that. If you remember correctly before, it was like 1.21 was overall plan and 1.22 was unit plan and all that good stuff. So this should be a little bit simpler. If you have any questions, just come and ask. I'd be happy to show you. And we'll dig a little deeper into this if needed. You know, a lot of these meetings are going to be based on what you guys want to see too. I don't want to sit up here and just monotonely dictate everything that I'm trying to show you. I want you guys to interact. So if you have any questions, please jump in and ask.
I was just going to comment that.
Not you, Rick, though. Go ahead.
I was just going to compliment you on how great this cover sheet looks.
Well, then absolutely, please.
Take it back, Rick. He said he didn't want it.
No, I'm serious. This already looks like a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of what we had before. It's just been tweaked a little bit, and you'll probably notice too in these, Rick and everybody else, you're going to see some of these pink instructional texts that I have tried to place throughout, and I'll continue to place throughout to kind of help people know what we're doing with what and what to do where, to kind of help facilitate that until you kind of understand what our process is and how to achieve the graphic we're looking for. So that comes in a little bit later, actually. The global parameters, I can show everyone that. The preliminary stamp for the title blocks are also tied to that. So,
You want to just pause for a second?
Sure.
Any questions? We don't have anything online yet, but anything from anybody? All right.
So you'll see when you first get in here, some of you may have done this, some of you may not have, and may not have noticed. There is what's called a browser organization. And if you right click any of these headers, which they are listed as views, the schedules, and the sheets have this ability. You'll see in this project browser that you can actually edit these and basically control how it's sorting and displaying in the project browser. The one thing that I do ask, in fact, I recommend create your own if you need to help yourself move around. There's plenty of parameters here you can choose from to filter by, but please don't change the default one. So like this one is 7 gen, please don't change that one. If you have to, create a new one, duplicate it, whatever you need to do. but that'll give you different looks. And what I mean by that is, let's say I'll pick this phase. I have no idea what is even in here. This was already in there before, but if I apply it, you'll see what it did is it changed how it's organized over here. This can be a very powerful tool to help you find what you're looking for as well. Recommendation, try to get used to this one, because it's going to be the default in every single project. And if you get used to it, you'll be able to find your way around. That's never a good sign.
Does it only change for you?
It'll change for anybody. Well, yeah, it only changes for me. If I right click it right now and do it, yeah, it's only, it should not affect other people. No. So there's one for views. There's one for schedules. Notice there isn't one for legends. Rumor has it they may be bringing that at some point, but I don't know that for sure. But there's several settings that you can do. You just right click it, go to project browser, sheets, your schedules, you edit whatever one you want, go to the sorting and grouping, change however you want to do it, play around with it, create your own, have fun. So that is the browser organization. The other part of the bigger part of this is you'll notice this working view and sheet view thing. And over the years, I've implemented this in several firms, and it's always an issue to think of at first because nobody really thinks of it this way. But working views and sheet views, a brief history, are something that was necessary when Revit first started because they didn't have view templates. So in order to keep drawing views safe, so if people went in and changed doors to blue and turned off kitchen equipment and made all the walls hatched purple or whatever, just so they could see things a little easier, they would forget to go back and undo that. There wasn't a quick way to do that. So when it comes to print time, they would go to print, and of course all that stuff would be purple and pink and all that good stuff, and which is never good. So when view templates came around, it kind of made these a little bit less necessary. However, there are tools in here that will allow us to temporarily turn things on and off, which is really nice. I use it on a daily basis. And I'll do one of these focus trainings on that in the future. But I still like to use the working views versus sheet views, so that way I know which ones I really shouldn't go in and mess with. And if I know that there's a set for sheet views, I know that those views should be on a sheet. My working views obviously are just views that I can do anything I want with the graphics. That's the only difference. They're the same as any other floor plan view. For instance, it's just I can change the settings and the graphic settings, and I don't have to hurt any of the plans as I'm doing it. You'll also notice too, now in Revit 23, they have these nice little colors next to each one to let you know if it's been sheeted. So that's kind of a nice addition. You can actually flip through here and take a look and see what actual views have been placed on sheets and which ones haven't, which makes it clean up a little bit easier. You can see this one down here. Second floor hasn't been, but the first floor has been. I don't even know if it'll show. Yeah, you can remove it from a sheet. You can move the view aligned to a sheet. There's several different new things that they've added to this menu that I haven't even gotten into much because, being old school, I just kind of move things around old school. I need to get used to that. So again, the name of the game for Autodesk was making things more efficient for you. Hence why we want to try to upgrade whenever we can. So, all right, moving on to the next one, sheet organization. Some of you have seen some of this already and have pulled out your hair, been extremely happy with it, all the above, right? And so I just wanted to point out a couple of things that have changed from graphic points of view. For one, any of the sheets that you see here in the project browser have been created already and had legends and notes already placed. And I'm in the process, and I haven't finished this all, but I'm also putting in some reference planes. And the reason why I'm doing that is it's going to allow you to quickly place another legend, not necessarily from one of the same plan to another, but I know if I bring this guy in, I know that this point goes right there. And now I know it's put in the exact space where it should be.
And for awareness, those reference planes are set up to not print.
Yes.
Don't delete them. Just place it on your sheet and keep moving.
Yep. And if you want, and if you don't want to see them, you can always double click in it and hit your VV or visibility graphics and go turn them off. I mean, if they're bugging you, which I know it can, so I can turn off both of those, and you'll see they'll go away, but they won't print.
Jason, does that change the setting for you specifically for everyone in the model?
Everyone in the model. Yep, it's a, that is a view type visibility graphic. So yeah, it's whenever you hit the VV or the VG, you're affecting that view for everyone. If you work on a view template, same thing goes. You're working on that for everyone. So that's why you want to be careful with the new ones.
And as you mentioned, we'll do a focus training on temporary views versus turning things on and off in the view template. Ideally, you're never doing that. It's set up to print exactly how we want things to look. I would say if you're not comfortable using the temp tools, turn off the view template, turn it back on. But working with Jason and going through the temp views has worked great for me.
All right, so the next thing, the view templates, I want to show you guys how those have changed, at least from a naming standpoint. Let's see if I can find them here. View templates, manage. So you'll notice it's quite a bit shorter list. Doesn't mean we can't add. Doesn't mean we're okay with everything that's there. I can definitely guarantee that not all the line weights have been gone through yet. It's a process. So it'll take some time to get through that, but I'm working diligently on that. But these are pretty self-explanatory. I mean, building sections, it's going to put your building section graphics where they should be. It's going to turn things on and off the way they should, with a huge caveat of links. That's a whole separate topic. But it will set everything up, at least from a benchmark standpoint. The other thing that it does is it also places any new views that you create in the proper location over here in your project browser. So that's super important. You'll also notice when we look at the drawing sheet list, it'll do that with your sheets, your placeholders as well. So there's no more guessing as to where did that go. You know exactly where it's going to go, once you get used to it, I should say. So the view templates are a big deal, very important. And feel free to add some to them. I would highly suggest and request put your initials in front of them or something if it's a working one. I like to use W dot. You might see some of these in here. These are ones that I've created over the years that help me applying view template, temporary view settings, so I can quickly look at something and then turn it off. They become very helpful in that regard. So there's a lot more room here. Use them as you need to. If you see any discrepancies, maybe I missed something, just bring it to my attention. I'll get it fixed in the templates for the next time and help you get it fixed in yours. So again, we'll deep dive into that a little bit further later. All right, the next thing I have, publish order numbering. So this is a good one. So I went through and looked through this list, made a lot of sense. The publish order, even though I haven't used it in the past the way that we use now, it does make sense. And I used a very similar approach prior in employers previous. But this is important so we can make sure that the sheet listings in the drawing master list and on our cover sheets appropriately order. You'll notice it's not all encompassing, but they also are pretty clear, you know, structurals in the 30 series, civils in the 20 series. And this is important for Steelhead as well, so you kind of understand how this goes. This is something that Howard and I are going to work on next week to get updated into yours. We have low voltage shown, and we also have an additional one called other. That's why that you see that this is widened a little bit, where our food service, any kind of for reference only type sheets, those kinds of things will reside. So to show you where that is, I'm going to go to the drawing sheets master list. So you may or may not have seen this. Something that I've thought about doing is coloring some of these other things. I've thought about removing some of these columns. Ultimately, it's come down to just leaving it as it is, because I don't know from one project to another how complicated it's going to be. Like take Many Farms, for instance. Many Farms has several volumes, and I'm limited as to how many filters I can run. I can only run 4 filters on a view setting. So Once you add that volume number and the building name in there so they properly order on the cover sheet, the main cover sheet, it limits you to 2 other parameters. And so hopefully, I know I've been hitting the Revit Ideas board. If you haven't seen it, go there, look up some of these things. You can vote on them. That's the only way Autodesk even updates their roadmap anymore. Not a lot of people know that, but they actually do pay attention to that. And there is a roadmap, so you can always go look at that up too to see what kind of features are coming down the line. But this is something that is pretty important. I know before the status quo was using the revision schedule, and I just want to say out loud to everybody, that's bad. Don't ever do that. If you see that in a model, please let me know, because that's going to affect after bid project CA. Absolutely. Yes. So the revision schedule is for I use them for alternates as well, but, or not alternates, but revisions of either bulletins, which we don't call them bulletins anymore, CCDs, addendums,
ASI.
yeah, any of those type of after contract bid document release, we have to legally keep track of that stuff. So you'll see the bubbles, right? I'm sure people can see me on the screen, bubbles, with the tag in it.
Right, during design, you don't want that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that whole process, that whole tool is strictly meant for that post-bid type scenario. It was never meant to be a sheet list organizing tool. And it's because there's, granted, they've updated it and it's more flexible now to accommodate it, but it's not the ideal tool to use. The issue that I would run into before is it would automatically number your CCDs or your proposal requests or addendums, and it won't let you put 2 number ones. So I can't put a number 1 addendum and a number 1 bulletin. I couldn't. I can now, but we're not going to go down that road. That's kind of messy. But
and as you said with the revision schedule, you have to put a bubble on every sheet, otherwise you're not going to get that date.
Correct. And of course, there is a way to get around that too, but we don't want to show that.
We
So
don't get around stuff
yeah.
anymore.
Yep. Yes. So that's an important one. I think most of you have probably dealt with this already. So
You mean like the rounding dimension style?
Yeah, that's going too.
yeah.
We'll tackle dimensions later.
Yeah,
That'll
we've
be
got a whole
discussion.
focused thing on that. So the other big part to the sheets that I wanted to show, some people have seen it, some people have not, is all Bodeway companies have their logos preloaded into this title block, cover and this title block. It also resides in not just the 7-gen title block, which I will rename to Bodeway at some point, but it also resides in the IHS, the VA, and ultimately, well, in BIA, and ultimately in the VA ones, because those are provided to us, so I haven't gotten into those to update them. But the cool thing about it is it makes it super easy for anybody to use this title block as their title block. So a real quick demonstration, I can go in here and look at if this project was something that, let's say it was a steelhead project, and I wanted to show the particular logo at the top for them. I could normally go in here and pick it. Of course, it's not loaded, so I'm going to use WBK, which I should have started with. But when I hit OK, you'll see that WBK's is at the top, and their address is there as well. This is quite a bit different than having to just stick an image in the model, in the sheets, and hope that it looks good and that it's placed in the same place it is every other time in every other project. 99.9% of the time it's not.
Well, and to go with that, too, Jason, blurring the lines of the companies, there's going to be projects that will be led by Steelhead, there's going to be projects that will be led by WBK as the prime, so it just makes it more flexible for us as we're modeling. WBK will never work in Revit.
Correct. Well, don't ever say never, but
Never at the moment.
yeah. So, but all the companies ones will be in here. Steelhead, Blue Stars, you name it. I'm not sure why. I must have accidentally purged them out, so I'll stick them back in here. Save this really quick. And they'll be available. Also too, in the BIA one, in the Bodway one, they're not quite loaded yet, but in the BIA title block, which is actually loaded in here as well, you'll see that there's numerous places to put several of them. And these are only meant for Bodway companies. This isn't meant for if you have Salis O'Brien on your project. They're going to put their own logo on their own drawings. We shouldn't be putting their logo on any of our drawings. But it acts the same way. So if I go to edit the actual family, I can go in and say, okay, well, the first consultant is going to be, let's put in Blue Star. For the second one, we're going to put in fact, let's just put them all in. Put WBK and do all that. Here we go. So you can see now everybody's logos inside your title block, super quick and easy. And you can change the order, you can do all kinds of stuff, and it's all pre-programmed in. So this again, in the idea of efficiency, we want to keep you focused more on design, detail, the project itself, and less on the documentation part of it in this respect. Because you can imagine if you had to place all these images in the same location every single time, it's not fun. So that's the whole intent there. This one also actually has the BIA Southwest region. It also has Grand Prairie region, I believe.
Great Plains.
Great Plains, that's what it is. And I'm planning on adding others as we work in them, but we can switch those out as well. What's that? I probably was. Yeah, probably was. Yep. So the Bodway logo, nested families, and the nice thing about this is let's just say we go out and acquire another company. We can easily add theirs to it, and it's ready to go. There's very little upkeep and work to make sure future developments and changes can happen quickly. So.
The VA title blocks is different than this setup.
Yeah, I haven't done the VA ones because those are the ones that are given to us to use because it's their yeah, you pull it from the till, and I mean I can pull one, but we'd have to every time we pull it, we'd have to make sure that it hasn't changed at all. Now granted, hopefully their revision numbers are accurate and their dates on them are accurate, but I will do one for sure and get it in there. I just haven't done it yet because I haven't found a good VA one yet to start it on yet. I just haven't gotten to it. Eric wants it to be on his, so. So yeah, we can do it on the, sure. Sure. I can easily incorporate it, so.
I was gonna say, not to jump ahead, but one thing we want to note though is don't save over families on the network. If you need any modifications, coordinate Jason in the discussion, but don't save it back to the network. You overwrite existing parameters, you don't want to overwrite and save.
Yep. I'm gonna try to move it along here a little bit. I'm kind of running behind here on my own time schedule. The other thing that is really helpful, that will be really helpful, we'll dig into this one too, is add-ins. Everybody should have certain add-ins, and I'm going to double check and make sure that's happening. But this something about Revit that isn't native, and I don't understand why it's not native to the program, but there are several add-ins that supported our Excel Revit bidirectional transferring. One of them that I use that everyone should have is DiRoots, and what that does is allows you to have pre-set up Excel sheets that you can then load into your project and fill out parameters. So in this case, I could fill out up to, I think I've got 12 spots in here, I think. We could have 12 different consultants, and instead of having to hand type these all out, I have an Excel sheet that I can use, place it into another Excel sheet in the orders that I want them, and hit apply, and it'll apply it to the sheet, and I'm done. Much quicker than having to try to find the address and try to find this and find that. That is going to be a deep dive with our add-ins. One of the very first ones we're going to do, actually. So stay tuned for that. All right, let's see where am I at here. All right, wall types. Everyone's favorite topic recently. Wall types have been changed. Of course, I'm a little biased, but I think they're a little bit simpler to follow. mainly because they're numbered now and they're not specifically named with a metal stud or CH stud by itself in front of it, so they accidentally get used. But you will notice that each type has its own number now. And recently, it's not 100% complete. Recently, we've determined that STC ratings need to be included, as well as wood stud, which I should have realized wood stud, that's on me. But we have a couple projects right now we're going to institute that on, and then I'll get them copied over. So we'll have that in here very, very soon. But you'll notice a couple things in here. Easily 1A, and this is good for steelhead too, so they kind of know what's when they start seeing it. Whether it's one-sided jip, two-sided jip, that's pretty much what the number stands for. The very first few, 1 is a one-sided jip, A is the stud framing or the furring framing size. And they'll tag just like this. So in a project, when you bring in a wall, you use a wall type, it will automatically display it in a schedule on the floor plan under your partition types with the description of exactly what wall type that is. You'll also notice down here, and these are going to move a little bit again, we got CH studs and things. We need to add some STC and some wood stud things in here, but 4s are where the CMUs, those are probably going to bounce to 5s or 6s, and this stuff will move down. But it gives you a little brief description of what it is. Not necessarily UL rating. UL rating can be built into it. They are built into it from what I've used in the past. Not saying that they won't be updated and need to be changed for your project, but they're there.
To touch on the rated walls a little bit, in the past we were aligning a annotated wall type in the center of the wall and then creating a group. That's no more. Everything's built right into the wall type. You'll get the appropriate color and poche of whatever the rating is across the board.
Yeah, whether it's existing or new, which is kind of nice.
It'll streamline the process and make it easier. You just gotta pick the right wall while you're modeling. If you get a model from a consultant, and you're putting that information in, you may have to go back, split walls, and change it out to the proper type. I'm going through that on VA Detroit right now.
Yeah, so the big one you'll see here are these existing wall types. These are all nominal in size, and the reason why they're nominal in size is twofold. One, any existing set that you get that's more than 10 years old, more than likely, has nominal hand-drawn dimensions in it. Secondly, if you are lucky enough to get in a CAD file, I guarantee you that CAD file was drawn nominally. So it makes tracing a lot simpler and a lot quicker to input existing conditions. So that's why these are set to be nominal as well. Now, that being said, Eric can attest to this. The VA hospital, for instance, that he's working on, he went to make sure that the existing was accurate and had to add all of his fire ratings for existing and realized that there was 75 different wall type thicknesses in it. What I would do in that case is duplicate one, name it the appropriate size, change the size, use it. Because that's going to make it easier down the line if we ever need to go back and say, okay, well, we know what this wall type is now. We want to show it this way. We know we can have the utmost sincere thought that that thing is going to be accurate. And without this, you're going on a research project every time you're trying to change your wall. And we don't want that, right? We want when these things are input, we want to know that if we need to make major changes later, that we can feel confident we can do it without messing a lot of things up, like room square footages and locations of the walls and all those kinds of things. So these are pretty important to use these generic model types or generic wall types. It's going to make it easier to, I mean, that's basically what it's using to filter, so we can actually show existing walls as 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, and halftone. It's critical to the graphic setup. And this is part of the reason why recently, some of you may or may not know, the Many Farms team had thought about bringing this stuff in, and we're going to bring them in. But the thing that I wanted everybody to understand is, depending on how graphics were set up in the old system versus the new, as you can imagine, along with location lines, where those location lines were set when they were originally drawn, because I can tell you not very many people realize that that's as important as it is. depending on how that was all set up, you could really mess up a model by just replacing wall types. You really can. If they're verbatim the same size, sure, great, do it. By all means, you can do it. But you just want to make sure of it. It's just something to know that, you know, you don't want to blanketly do it and think everything's going to be good. I can tell you from past experience, I've had to completely remodel models before because we tried to do it, didn't realize that the walls weren't drawn in accurately, and it screwed up all kinds of counts and things, and it was just easier to, we couldn't undo it, so it was just easier to redraw it, and I really don't want anybody to have to do that. So
To touch on that, model it right the first time, you're good to go. There's no
yeah, and the only other thing I'll add to that too is as you're modeling, and I don't necessarily have, well, maybe I do have an example of that I can show. As you're modeling, I've noticed this a few lately too. You want to be careful when you're modeling these things, especially rated walls. What will usually happen is if somebody's inputting an existing and they're drawing away and they're drawing a wall the entire length of the building to create that quarter wall, it's great, it's fine and everything. But they also apply later that this is a rated wall, right? And let's just say, for instance, there's a vestibule here. This portion of this wall does not need to be rated, nor do we want to show it as that. So you would want to cut that wall, break that wall, make this the regular type without a rating, and the rest of it is rating. We have to be careful of that, right? Because that's exactly what BIM is for, is to basically virtually create your building to see if it works. You know, we're trying to eliminate errors and omissions, get rid of as many RFIs as we can, make the project as, you know, successful for not only us, but for the owner and for the CM and everybody else involved. So we just want to be accurate. It seems like tedious work, but it's necessary work.
Well, and then if your model goes out to somebody else, ideally they're happy with what they're getting. And, oh, hey, 710 or Bodway did this right. Their models, we can count on them being accurate.
Well, you'll get what I call BIM arrogant at some point. You'll get models from someone and you're like, oh my gosh, they didn't know what in the world they were doing. You know, I mean, it happens way more than you think. Curtain wall tool. So one thing, there's a couple terms that I like to use in Revit that Revit uses that a lot of older, more experienced and seasoned architects and engineers hear and think, oh no. And one of them is keynotes. That's a necessary evil. When I say keynotes, it's not the old style thought of keynotes. It's the keynote system that Revit has called keynotes. The same thing goes with the curtain wall tool. I'm normally, since I've kind of mostly done commercial, some medical, some multi-use, a bunch of those kinds of commercial type spaces, not as much residential. I usually use the curtain wall tool to create all my exterior windows punched openings. And I do that for two reasons. One is it's way easier to basically create them on the fly as you normally would. Whereas if you try to install or import Autodesk out of the box families, they're all geared towards residential. So that's where I would point most people to the residential type windows. But with the storefront curtain walls, it's very similar to how it's going to be built. It's a stick built. You know, you can put in your mullions, however pattern you want. I don't have to have 4,000 family types of windows to stick these in. It just works out. It's worked out for me really good over the years, so I've kind of stuck with it. The issue is when it comes to how do I manage that? So it's a wall, right? And I need to tag it as a window. So I have tags that'll actually tag it using the window symbol. And so it's not very difficult. As long as you have the pieces and parts to make it work the way you want it to, it'll all work. So we'll get into that as well. I will say this is an actual door with a side light in it. And I have modeled it as curtain wall before, because all curtain wall, all type of storefront with doors in it can all be made in curtain wall, the curtain wall tool. And that's what I would prefer to do. Now there are some times where I do use this simplistic side light model, and I do have them for double and single, I believe. And you can use either one. But I've used them both enough that I actually created it and said, you know what, it's worth using this one. So.
Hey, Jason, stop for a second. Nadine has a question that she would like to ask.
Yes.
The one is, so when we have these generic wall types, that's our typical, like it's a one material thing. If you go into the family, it's like concrete or whatever.
Yeah.
For, as every building is different, we look at the existing documents and then we update that family that is the existing placeholder with the layers of what's actually documented.
I would not do that.
No.
And the reason for that is big. It's a liability thing. Do we really know what that wall is just because that drawing shows that this is that? It's to our best guess. AutoCAD could be showing it, but unless you actually physically go out and core that wall, we can't guarantee that's what it actually was built as. So it's a liability issue.
With the zeitgeist of get it done right the first time or model accurately,
Mhm.
how do we track to make sure that the team communicates like what type of construction that existing wall is, if we're gonna join to it or modify it in any way?
Well, and we have, and somebody else can chime in on this, Steve, maybe you have a thought, or Eric, but in the past, you know, a lot of the notes are CYA notes, to be quite frank, and the contractor shall verify and note us of any discrepancies that look different from the existing drawings we're providing. That kind of gives us a little bit of help on that.
I can give a specific example on VA Clarksburg. A lot of my staff has changed, but Shane's work on it. We have one wall that is constructed out of concrete. It's a vault. They adhered chipboard to it. We know there's rebar in it. And what we attempted to do with the demo note, we modeled it this existing, whatever the thickness was. And with the demo note, we attempted to describe what we could of the wall's makeup, but exactly what Jason said, unless we core and know that's exactly how it's constructed,
Yeah, there's no guarantee.
there's no proof that that's what it is. So it's hard for a contractor to bid that. So if we can describe it in our demo note, that gives them a little more information, you know, of what we believe the wall makeup is.
Well, there is, just to add on to that real quick, there is a big price difference from demo of concrete with rebar to metal stud and gyp. So if we do kind of think we know what it is, you can put it in your demo note. It doesn't mean you have to model it that way, but you can still put it in your demo note. If we think this wall is concrete, mark it as concrete. I've had several contractors in the past ding people that other companies because they said it was gyp and it wasn't. So you just got to be careful with that. In today's climate, they could like to nickel and dime you.
Similar thing, like if you're running metal stud and drywall up against a wall that's plastered, I mean,
Be right.
you're not 100% positive. We can only go on the information that we either survey or that's given to us by the client.
Okay. And then my last question is, if we have two walls, for example, we said like this portion doesn't need the fire rating, but Revit sees it as one wall, we would duplicate it and then take away the 1 hour value so that they.
So I can show you that actually real quick. What I would do is I'd use this break command. Come down here, in fact, turn on thin lines. You hear me say that to everybody. But let's just say it's right there. Change that. We know that this is a rated 1D. So I would just change it to a 1 layer 5/8 inch, 3 5/8 inch metal stud. So I would just change it to that. We're done. Oh, actually I changed that to the wrong one. I changed it to a 1. It should be a 2. Sorry, because it's double-sided. But that right there is, and you can make it join. I mean, either way, it's no big deal. But that's the simple, quick way to do it. And then I would have, you know, if this wall was actually continuing down this way, if I can actually draw it the right way.
And it's good to see the red in all our plans, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Fire.
The only time that will not be applicable meeting is if we have like an STC plan, like we're doing for many farms. Then the fire ratings, I believe, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, would
Won't
be
show.
turned off, and you would see just your STC highlighted walls.
Right, because I mean, technically, MEP is probably going to, they're gonna actually like it, that the fact that they're split up, because now they don't have to read text to have to go back. They can graphically see, oh, this is an STC of whatever. I gotta have dampening whatever in it. This is a fire rated wall. I gotta put fire dampers in it. It makes it much easier for us to coordinate together.
Yes. One thing to add on back to Nadine's questions about existing conditions. If your existing wall assembly is staying and you're renovating a space and you're putting new walls in, then you want to know what the face-to-face is, right? so that you understand how much space you have to deal with within a room-to-room dimension, so that if you have clearance issues with ADA or whatever, that you're identifying that. So the guts of that wall don't matter so much. If you're putting an addition on a building that's existing, you need the most important thing isn't necessarily what it looks like in plan, it's what it looks like in section. Either cross section in plan or in a transverse section in wall section form. So, when we're doing renovation projects, I typically, if you work with me, I typically say, what's the existing condition? Where is it drawn? And if it's not drawn in your model, it's hard to know how you can stitch your addition to that existing building. So wall sections are super important. They don't have to be 3D modeled. They're illustrations that are helping you to solve the problem. So the sooner you can get into, especially if you're doing a renovation project or an addition to an existing building, cut those existing wall sections in schematic design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good part of a good cartoon set. Absolutely. Everybody should be doing cartoon sets early on. It'll help you kind of lay out your project too. Good questions. So doors and windows, continuing. Doors, I revamped it a little bit. You'll hear me start talking about key schedules. This is something that I'm not sure if MEP uses yet, but they may be able to use in the future. Basically, without getting too deep into it as I'm running short on time here, we can use these to quickly fill out schedules very quickly and be accurate about it. We can also do quick QCs on it. We can do all kinds of quick and easy, efficient things to ensure we're eliminating errors and omissions and being as efficient as we can. And what it'll allow me to do, it'll allow me to fill out a door schedule really quick. It'll let me fill out a room finish schedule really quick, even though we don't do those, but they will also fill out the tags in the finish plan. So as you can see, you'll see in the deeper dive how more efficient you can be and feel better that somebody didn't accidentally thumb the keyboard wrong and it spelt something wrong, and next thing you know, your contract documents go out and half your stuff is messed up. You have to be deliberate to update a key plan or a key schedule. So that's the benefit to those.
Similar with the door schedule too, we can utilize plugins to work back and forth with our hardware consultants as it relates to the sets, and it just streamlines the process and ideally takes out the human error.
Well, and it's important to say too, I mean, use Assa Abloy and Allegion for their services. They provide free, they should probably get paid for this, but they do free consult work. They do your entire spec. They'll sit down with you and the client. They'll sit down with just the client, however you prefer. They'll go through which door needs what type of hardware. They'll supply you with a door hardware spec, open spec, which is important. Even though they represent their own brands, they do write it in a way they understand that they can't sole source, and they have no problem doing that. Julie Chicklin at Assa Abloy, and now it's Chris Mueller at Allegion. I've worked with them for several years. They do this for me all the time. I would never say out of sight, out of mind, but it can alleviate your workload in what you have to do in CDs, because they know the product, they know what they got to do. They'll talk to the client with you, without you, whatever the case may be, however you prefer, and they'll supply you with the hardware sets that we can then transfer back in to the schedule real quick and easy. And it kind of wraps up that whole process. So I'm going to skip a couple of these here. We'll get into those in the deeper dives and numbering the tags. They don't have ovals around them anymore, so they're not as deterrent in the plan, make a little bit more room. So plan views, scope boxes. Scope boxes are huge. You may or may not have started using these. If I am an MEP consultant, i.e. Steelhead, they would love to see these because they can automatically set up a lot of sheets very quickly. They're preset. Right now there's one that's in here currently called overall building that you can resize, and there's 3 unit ones. And we can always duplicate them. But if you have unit A, unit B, unit C, you can place these with the exact crop region area you want to see on a plan, and you can tell MEP, you guys can copy and paste them, run a Dynamo script, wherever you want to get them out, but you can reuse them. And all their sheets, all their views will be cropped in the same exact way that yours are. So it provides some consistency with efficiency built in. Along with that, guide grids. Some of you may or may not have worked with guide grids before and have messed with them lately. Guide grids are meant to be the same kind of help for you. And there's several of them preset. I have an A, a B, a C, an E, an E, an F, G, and H. So that should get us through most projects. If you need to add more, I can always show you how to add more. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to be able to place views in the same exact location on every sheet. So if I have a unit A and it's gonna be right in this location, right? I can move this from the intersection of the columns to the intersection of that and tell everybody that's where the guide grid is. And they can then place all their views in the same spot. So when you're flipping through a set, that view does not move all over the place. It's the same everywhere. Seems simple. Some people have used reference planes in the past. I can tell you, I've used guide grids. It seems kind of like a hassle at first, but once you get to use them, it's wonderful. There are some caveats to it that I don't like. However, most of you probably won't run into some of this stuff because it's more setup things. But you can also use, it only recognizes two types of element on the sheet to move around. Like you noticed when I did that, it actually snapped to the intersection of that grid, of the column grid. So column grids is one of them. The other one happens to be reference planes, which it never used to be, but now it is. So you can use reference planes as well. I will say, if you can use a grid, it's better because you can just tell somebody, hey, use grid 1B or 2Z or 2.2X or whatever it is as your base, and they'll know exactly where they got to go. With a reference plane, it's a little bit more difficult, right? They got to copy the reference plane in, make sure it's in the right spot, all that good stuff. So use those when you can. Again, we'll dive deeper into that one, but that's something a little bit newer too that most people haven't been using. Guide grids, we did that. Gosh, I'm actually back on time now, believe it or not. All right. So the next section that I focused on was kind of, what do you guys want to see for future focus trainings? Any suggestions? And Eric, I'll ask you to jot any down that come up, if any, maybe, or somebody. I don't really care who, but.
It wasn't on my fee negotiation.
Yeah, right.
Since I got vegetarian pizza, I'll take that.
Yeah.
Do you want to run through real quick the ones that we've already identified? And
Absolutely.
We can add additional.
Yeah, and keep in mind this is kind of where we break away from what we called in this a mandatory MEP / architectural group. MEP, you're more than welcome. Steelhead, you're more than welcome to attend these just to kind of know. Even have them on in the background if you want, but it's not necessarily a mandatory part. Some of the things that we will be digging deeper into, families, how to build them, how to edit them, doors, casework, equipment, wall types. We're going to dig really deep into those. Talking about the location lines, we kind of touched on this a couple weeks ago, and we have a video up on that. Don't forget to talk about the videos, by the way. Location lines, ratings, those kinds of things. We'll get deep down into modeling windows, the process I do to do my windows and the grouping and placing them in places. So if they change, they all change at once. Laser scanning, best practices, dimensioning, keynotes, how to use the keynote system. This is going to be really important for wall sections. You're not going to believe how fast you can do a wall section when you learn how to do this. And you'll also have a lot of confidence in knowing that it was done right and the nomenclature hopefully matches your spec. It makes that process a lot better. Things like gypsum board, you won't have a numerous array of ways to spell things and abbreviate them or whatever. It'll be across the board. It's really nice. I'm working on something right now that Steve's going to take a look at as an example that I can show to Blue Star here soon because we're getting to that point now in the many farms projects. So the wall sections and detailing, Revit add-ins. I know you guys hear me say this a lot, and I've showed some of you some of them. Some of you don't have them all. I'm going to make darn sure you all have them all. They're all free. And they do help. They will speed up a lot of your processes once you understand what they're there for. PiRevit, big one. That's how we're going to manage keynotes. So make sure if you want to kind of learn a little bit more on that on the side, just let me know.
PiRevit is also nice, is something is jacked up in your model, and you're wondering, who did this?
You're not supposed to share that with
Who
people.
edited this? I now know who messed it up.
Yeah, we do know that. Dun dun dun. Or who did? Yeah, who deserves a cookie? You're right. We're gonna talk more about working with temporary views, temporary view properties, things again to speed up your workflow, so you don't have to keep flipping sheets and clipping views, and hopefully you remember to go back and change settings and all that good stuff. The door hardware plugin, we'll go through that, what you need to do. Title block editing, cover sheet setup, again with the Excel file transfer, we can speed up a lot of that monotonous text input. Dimensioning, dimensioning is a big one. Schedules, another huge one. A lot of people don't quite fully understand what all schedules can do for you, whether they, a schedule doesn't have to go on a sheet. It can be a working schedule and it can give you valuable information, i.e. there's some W ones in here I think I might have touched on a little earlier. And I don't know that Steelhead has any of these necessarily. I think they do, but I don't think they name them the same to kind of help them with quantities and things like that. But for instance, let's look at, I don't know, I think I had a walls one in here. Yeah, so there's a wall material takeoff that I've had created here a long time ago. You don't see anything in here because I haven't updated it. But this will give me an area of the material, a linear footage, a square foot including install. So there's some parameters that you can fill out with costs, and it can give you roundabout costs. Keep in mind, the point of this isn't for you to throw this on a sheet. We don't want to quantify anything on our sheets, ever. The minute we do that, we open ourselves up to a whole slew of problems. We want the contractors to be diligent and to do their own quantity takeoffs. But what this will allow us to do is be able to maybe double check to see if our estimator is even close. I think of everything as a downstream use, and at some point, someday, we're going to get to a point where everybody's going to use the Revit model to do estimating, to do, not necessarily us, but working in an IPD environment with a CM or whatever the case may be. That'll come at some point. And I try to anticipate that, when I'm creating these types of Revit standards, because I know I've used some of them in the past with some highly sophisticated CMs. Most CMs in the area aren't that sophisticated, so you may not use them. But the good thing is you can have the tools at your fingertips to be able to double check things and to verify. If you get for instance, and maybe Eric, you can speak to this too, but if you get an estimate that says you have 4,500 square feet of JIP, and darn well there's at least 12, because you can come in and look at a quick schedule real quick and know it was modeled. Then there's a conversation you can have, that you can say, no, I think you're off. And then you can have that argument, but at least you catch it at that point and not necessarily in the end when it actually truly matters, when money has to exchange hands. So casework, doors, equipment. I've got a whole list of things here. Add-ins, of course, Bodeway file locations and add-in install locations. I actually have, if you look in the agenda, I do have one location, I believe, of where the library finally resides now. There was talk before, mainly for Blue Star, that we were going to move the library to the SharePoint. We don't have to do that anymore because they have gotten their own server. So they have map drives that they're currently working on. So they have access to our drive, or will have access to our drive very, very soon. So I did post the link to the official Revit library on that agenda. So you can always go to that link or hit me up and I can send you the link to it. And that's where you'll start looking for your families. Real quick on that part too, with families, when you're searching for them, don't always go right to the internet. I would highly suggest, first of all, first thing I would do is see if it's in the model already, if it's a pretty common type family or element, like a chair or something. If you don't see it there, go to the Revit library, do a search with the Windows search bar for things that you think it's going to be. Chair, striker, bed, whatever the case may be, and you may find it. If you don't there, maybe out of the box, maybe do a search, you know, through Autodesk's website, or not a website, but through the add-in here, which I can show really quick. They just introduced this a couple releases ago, but there's this Load Autodesk family. And what's nice about this is instead of everybody having the generic out-of-the-box families installed directly to their machine or to a server location, it's all in the cloud now, which is huge. And I'm hoping at someday that we can then upload as a customer of Autodesk, our libraries up here, so we can get this nice little search all-in-one kind of thumbnail graphic to be able to see and all that. It'd be really helpful. This is something Revit has lacked for quite a few years. Early on in the 8.1 version, I think they had something, but for whatever reason it was taken out. There's a lot of plugins and add-ins that third parties have made a lot of money on for content management. I've used them. I've tried using them all. There isn't a one that's great. Or if it is great, it costs way too much and it doesn't seem like it's worth it. So hopefully someday they'll bring this in. But you can do a search just like you can in Windows. You know, if I know, and I use this all the time, like detail components. If I'm looking for like wood, I don't know, shoot, give me something to look up here, I guess. Wood fastenings or something. I know I can go right in here to the assembly code and find it. Oh yeah, there's a lag screw. That's what I needed, and load it. I mean, there is a lot of good basic families in here, which you want to try to keep to if you can. Generic families all relate to an LOD. LOD is level of development, level of design. We'll get into that as well in future discussions. That's an important thing. Whenever you go out and grab things from a manufacturer, the LOD was probably 9,000, which nobody in their right mind ever uses. In fact, we don't model anything over 350 at the very most, unless we're getting paid a lot of money to do so, because when you get into those upper LODs, it's pretty stringent on what it needs to look like. It needs to look exactly like it is, and nobody wants to pay the money to do that. So let's see, key schedules, PiRevit, revision, the range system. I think that pretty much got everything. Oh, this is a big one. We'll also go through BIM 360 project archival process. There is no need, although you can still, there's no need to download models and place them on the server for backups, okay? We have an unlimited amount of space through BIM 360. We pay a lot of money to be able to have that access. We might as well use it. There is a proper way that you can ensure that you can find a backup of any kind at any time. And we'll be going through that as well. Some people have already shown that too, but just know that if you know about this tool, this is pretty much 90% of it. But when you go to Save to Central, you can use this comment section. That's what it's all about. Because then if you put in here 100% SD backup, then I can find that super quick and easy. I don't remember which project I did this for recently, I'd show that too, but it might take me longer to find it. But when you go into the actual home menu, and you come over, you can pick this and go to version history. You would see that comment right here and you would know right away, that is my backup and I can download it at any time. So as you can see here, there's this model has been saved 503 times. That's how many synced times this model's been synced. Of course, this is mine, probably wasn't the greatest example to show, but this is a template file. But you can check all this stuff with your projects as well.
And you'd recommend doing that comment towards the end of the phase?
I would. I mean, you can use it any time, but it's really important for that SD, DD, CD, 50%, whatever. If you want to archive something, make sure you can go back to it. Again, like I said, the models are living and breathing. So if once you're out of DD and you make a mark for CD, it's no longer a DD model anymore, right?
One caveat to that, so is with VA, they may have requirements that they want a Revit model at every submission. In that event, you have to download it to your network and send it to them.
You'd want to use the e-transmit.
But using the e-transmit, that can be a different topic.
It will be, yep.
In that event, you'll want to work with Jason to walk through that process before you send anything out.
Yeah, and it's all the e-transmit it does is it ensures a clean model, so we don't have any of our own proprietary information in it, so nobody can steal things. This is another reason why we don't want to really technically do seals in our Revit models, because anytime you send it out, no one ever thinks, oh, I got to go manually remove those seals. This particular e-transmit won't do that for you. It'll remove views, it'll remove purge unused families, but if that seal is anywhere in that model being used, it's not going to purge. So, all right, I'm going to open it up for questions, answers, demo. You want to see something, I can dig a little bit deeper into it. If you
Can you touch on the Revit add-ins real quick? I had said to Kyla that we would send out a list of what they are.
Yep.
And a brief description, but if you can just kind of
Sure.
overview those real quick.
Sure. So the big one you heard us talk about already is PiRevit. That one is pretty handy. You can notice how my tabs here are colored. That's all PiRevit. And you can set that up, turn it on and off, whatnot. There's a lot of things in here. This team who did that, that's the tool that Eric let the cat out of the bag on. You can use that to select objects, and it'll tell you who created it originally and who modified it last. It'll tell you the date. I don't know if it tells you the date and time, but I think it'll at least tell you who did it. And so that's a big one. The manage keynotes is a huge one. I don't know if this is necessarily going to pull up. Yeah, it did. This is a huge one. Out of the box Revit, the management for the keynote file is Notepad. I use Notepad++ because it allows multiple people to be in the same text file and can edit it, and it keeps track of it just like Revit does. So it's great. If you don't want to use PiRevit, you can always use Notepad++. I just would stay away from Notepad because it is a tab delimited CSV type file. So if the tabs aren't in the right spots, you're not going to be able to access it in Revit. So
To touch on that, I think that would be good for PMs as it relates to project-specific demo notes or other key notes. It allows them to work in Notepad++ if they're not comfortable in Revit.
yes. But there's a lot of helpful tools in here. This make pattern one is super popular with the interiors folks. Not necessarily ours yet because they may not know of it, but whenever you need to create intricate patterns, this is the tool to use. It's really awesome. Yes. There's a bunch of different ones in here. Some of them I haven't even used. You can pre-pick. Some of these other extensions, this EF Tools, people recently have seen the importance of this. With view filters, it allows you to copy filters from view template to view template, not just the filter itself, but also the settings for the filter. So if you've applied blue, hatch, halftone, pink background, whatever you did, it'll actually copy those over and you won't have to reset them or make them yourself. This is a nice one. Some of the other things in this particular extension, aligned viewports. I've never really gotten some of these. I've tried to use a lot of these before, and I've never had really good luck with multi-tag alignment and all that stuff. I've yet to find one that's really good. But take a look through some of these if you have them already. If you don't have them, let me know. I can help you get them. You install them all through the extensions menu by going here, and it'll list all the extensions that the original author of PiRevit has released for people. So there's a bunch of them. There is a MEP one that I will basically say I have no idea what it can do because I'm not an MEP guy, but it might be worth something to someone. There's also MEP design for the steelhead folks. Some of these other things are, I've looked at them, there wasn't much in them, but feel free if you want to install them, you can just pick it here and install it. Although it helps if I actually pick one that isn't already installed. Like this guy, I can install it, send it to where it's going. Okay, so that's PiRevit and the extensions. The other one is DiRoots 1. This one's got a lot of great tools. This is a completely free add-in. You'll notice I have this and CTC. Everybody should have the free version of CTC as well for two reasons. One is quick select and the other is renumbering. But there are some other tools in here that I really like and I use on a daily basis, like Spreadsheet Link. Makes my job managing multiple families and multiple pieces of data and models quickly and moving them from model to model. So highly recommended. There is a group of free tools and paid tools in both of the suites that you should have installed. So DiRoots has a lot of similar features. Again, this is all free, and they claim they'll always be free, so that's pretty important. Enscape, obviously. JOtools is a big one. This is the one where some of you may be familiar with the transfer project standards, and if I do manage transfer project standards, is a great tool, right? If I'm not in a schedule. But if I transfer project standards, what it lets me do, if I had two models open, is I can transfer a bunch of different categories from one model to another. The problem with it is it brings everything. So if I go and do view templates, for instance, I'm like, oh, I need this one view template in this model, and it happened to be one of our old template models. You're going to get every single view template that was created in that model, and you don't want that. I don't want that. So if you use the transfer single, you can easily transfer over picked individual ones that you want to bring over. And there's a whole slew of things that you can bring over with this tool. Some of them you can't even bring over with transfer project standards. So this is a great one. I use this daily as well. Fill patterns, filters, view template, there's all kinds of stuff in here. You can actually change casing of things. It's pretty cool. I think that's the majority of them. There should be 5 of them. Is that 5 of them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it's 5 of them. Yes?
Can you transfer project standards between a Revit 21 model and a 23 model, or is it just like 23 to 23?
Yes, you can. Giant asterisk. You would have to upgrade it temporarily first, but it can be done. You can open the model, let it upgrade, don't save it, transfer your project standard, send it back down. Now, if you want to go from 23 to 21, can't help you with that. Can't do it, unfortunately. And I'm glad you kind of mentioned that, because the goal here, the intent for us, is to jump new versions as soon as possible, I guess, with a giant asterisk. As soon as possible doesn't mean the day it comes out. As soon as possible means when I feel it's the first hot fixes come out, and a lot of other people tested it and screwed up a lot of their own crap, and so they fix it first for the first time, and then I jump on board, because the idea of it is we're constantly evolving. We want to be faster, more efficient, more consistent. We want the QA/QC process to be simple, easy, fast, and be confident that it works. And a lot of the tools that Autodesk brings on a yearly basis and major updates, 0.2s, 0.3s, 0.4s, is important. I can't even name enough of the features that have been added over the years that have completely changed the way I started doing things back in the day, i.e. view templates. That was a huge one. That was a huge one to get your mind wrapped around too, but it was a huge one, and it helped out a ton. And we're all reaping benefits of that today. So that's the point of upgrading whenever we can.
So it'll be a 7-gen shift. We've been doing it in the odd years for many years, but we're going to this mentality. Now that doesn't mean every project that's running in 2023 is going to get upgraded to 24. It has to be done at a logical point. If you're in the middle of CDs in 23, no, you're not going to upgrade. If you're halfway through DD, it can become questionable. SD, sure, no problem. You're not going to do it in the middle of the phase. Like, you'll complete your phase and then you can upgrade.
How I've looked at this in the past, and I still live to this day, anything that hasn't gone out for bid is a prime candidate to be upgraded. Anything that has gone out for bid, don't upgrade it. And I will say that was from 12 years ago. Recently, over the last 4 or 5 years, Revit has become stable enough to where I feel even comfortable upgrading it after it goes to CDs. Just because I know, it depends. Like Eric says, it's project dependent.
And client dependent.
And client dependent.
I was gonna say, sometimes, like, IHS is still using Revit 22, I think they said, and
Right.
so we have to keep ours in 21.
My argument to that, and Jason and I've had this discussion a few times, everything is user-based now. All they have to do is talk to their IT department, and they can get it upgraded. Now, asking the government to do it is a different story. They'll get it when we're 3 versions ahead of them again. So there's ways around that, but we have to be cognizant of what they have access to at the time.
Yeah, and communication. Yeah, if you read the VA, the TIL, even the current TIL says version 2019 or later, basically. And so, to me, everybody, unless it's the government who may have special clauses going on, but everybody has been moved to a non-perpetual license, which means in order to use Revit today, no matter what version it is, you have to be a current subscription holder. If you don't subscribe, you can't use any of Revit anyway. So, which also means the benefit of that is that you automatically get the new versions when they come out. So, and maybe that's just an awareness thing that maybe we can help, with some of the entities, the governmental agencies, be like, hey, have you talked to your IT people? I mean, I'm sure you guys are on this. We'd like to upgrade because of this reason. We want to stay latest and greatest, just for the simplicity and the efficiency of it. So, anybody else? Good job, Eric. That wasn't your job description. Yeah.
I guess it goes with what we're talking about, what the procedure will be to standardizing or making sure that teams that have to work in past Revit, like Revit 2019, I think I needed to work on for a project. Like what's going to be the procedure to make sure that that's consistent with our other stuff?
Yeah, come find me, and I'm always available to have discussions with the entities as well, to see if it's possible. If it's not possible, then we'll have to do those one-off. Like having to go back to a 2019 model is going to hurt, but we can do it.
The biggest thing that I've run into is families that were saved in newer versions.
Right. That is definitely a hiccup that can happen as well. Luckily, I do have some 21 and previous versions, but for the most part, since I got here, I've been working in 23, so I've just been updating them as I go.
So all the stuff we had before is gone.
Not all of it.
Over it.
Not all of it. Not all of it. Some of it. A lot of it. Anyway.
87% is gone.
Yeah. Does anybody else have anything?
Any questions online?
I had a topic idea.
Oh, shoot, Mike talk.
So I know phasing plans can be tricky, and whether we should even do phasing plans or how we do them, or is that even worth talking about?
It's worth talking about. Shane found out recently we agreed to adjust phasing in Revit on VA Clarksburg to accommodate a request of our MEP consultant. And in doing so, created a lot of rework for us. With some of the phasing plans that you and I have experienced together on projects, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole in Revit, but I also default to Jason's thoughts and forward thinking because I still have PTSD from phlebotomy in One West when we get into like 19 phased projects.
It can be done. If it just takes a good thought out pre-plan is what it takes. Yep. Perfect example. It'd be no different. It's very similar to Rosebud, to anyone else that has, I think the Pokagon Health, I think, isn't that one that has the several phases in it, Blackfeet, all those. It's just a very similar process. You have to have a good understanding of how those phase filters work, and just know that you can't tell it to pick this phase and this phase and this phase, but not pick this one or this one. I mean, it's everything and before. I mean, that's the only choices you have. So
whereas when we did phlebotomy, we put it into AutoCAD and we were able to control our graphics the way we wanted to. However, you can't do that until the very end, otherwise you're now modifying your plan in two locations, which is a terrible idea. Yeah. And Jason doesn't do AutoCAD.
AutoCAD is ugh. Don't like AutoCAD. It's still usable, still needed every now and then, but I guess I'll finish on this note. One of the big things I was hoping to get to that I wasn't able to is getting into linking and things. A lot of you have probably noticed there's two particular linked files in all of your models that haven't been utilized. One of them is structural placeholder, and the other one is MEP placeholder. These are important because instead of linking a new MEP file, so if, I'm going to be doing this with a Steelhead file here soon for Wahlburgers, I'm going to go ahead and use the MEP placeholder and reload from and load to that new file. The whole reason for that is because hopefully somebody went through and did all the visibility graphics and such to where I don't have to go back and redo them for new linked models. The caveat to that is CAD files. Anytime you insert or load a CAD file, you will have to go into all your view templates and make changes. It's just a sad fact. That's all there is to it. You can't pre-plan for things that aren't there. Just like templates, Revit templates won't let you preset work sets. So that's why we have what we call a starter model. The template is really not even a template file. It's a starter model. It's a model that's already been set up to be work shared. And it's just so we can get some of those visibility graphics settings in the view templates to account for things on the interiors work set, things on the MEP work set, things on the site work set, and things like that. So just know that there is some of that to go around. There is a way to bring in a CAD file to where you don't have as much issue, but it creates a lot of other issues, and that's to import. Never, ever, ever import a CAD file. I always say that, and then somebody will see me do it, and they'll be like, well, why did you do that? You told us not to do that. And I'll be like, because I know I gotta go back and clean up. So as long as you know what you gotta go back and clean up, then you're good. But for the most part, as you're working along, never, never, never import it if you can help it.
With linked CAD files, we will do it on Wahlburgers for food service equipment because they're not working in Revit. As long as things are on the appropriate layer, you can turn layers on and off in Revit through the...
Change colors, you can do everything.
You can do anything you need to do as long as you know what layer you need on and what you need off. That's
the hard part. When you think, oh, this is an interior wall. Oh, wait, all walls are on the interior wall layer. What the heck am I going to do? There's no way to separate that. So then you have to go duplicate the CAD model, make the changes yourself in order to be able to bring it in. So,
and then also the reload from. If we get a CAD file from food service, I'm going to overwrite the same CAD file that's already linked. I don't care about 15 iterations they have. I just need their final layout for our coordination.
Well, the
downside is if you modify what they send you to align with what you want your graphics to look like, you're going to do it again.
The good thing about it is, though, too, with the reload from tool, is if somebody sends you a CAD file that's not named the same, you can still use it. Because you can right-click the one that's in there, reload from, pick the new one, and it'll automatically change the name and update it in the same exact location as the other one was.
But we're also not responsible of version control of consultants' CAD files. They're supposed to give us the latest or whatever.
The caveat to that is, and I don't know this, I have to test it now if it's still true, but it used to be that if you do reload from and you get a different name, it'll actually reset your settings for visibility graphics. So maybe not anymore. I'll have to look at that. But or they move it, or that's the other thing. Never move a model if you can help it, even a CAD file. Yeah, I guess I'm getting shoved out of here. The whole point of this type of sit down talk is I want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with me, obviously, to come up and ask for help. This includes all of Bodway, Steelhead, Blue Star, whoever. I'm more than willing to help with whatever I can to help increase your efficiency. I take all comments into consideration. I do know that it's never my way or the highway, but I can tell you I've tried about every different way there is to do certain things, and I can tell you what can work and what can't work. But if you have a new way that works, I'm more than willing to listen. Anything to improve efficiency, it's what I'm all about. So, with that, cut. Thanks.